Hello, and welcome to another wonderful Synopsys webinar. I am Robbie Kaplow, VP and Group Publisher of Synopsys, and I am delighted to welcome you to our first virtual webinar of the year on political ad spend. We feel that this is a timely and really critical discussion to have, especially for the Synopsys community. For the next hour and a half, we're going to hear from really the smartest minds in the business on how to navigate your strategy so that you can take advantage of what we're really seeing as a gigantic splurge in political ad spend to the tune of upwards of $10 billion. Please submit your questions in the general chat to hear directly from some of our speakers. A very special thank you to our partners, Safe Exchange, Ad Impact, and LG Ad Solutions. So let's kick things off. Our first session is filtering political ads, leveraging AI and human creative review to find incremental opportunities while protecting publisher brand and safety. So that is a big one. And here to help us peel the layers of the onion are three very good people. First of all, Noor Nasir, basis Technologies, Gabe Thomas from Safe Exchange, and Albert Yu from Elemental TV. So take it away, Noor and Albert and Gabe.
Amazing. Thanks for the warm intro there, Robbie. And thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon or morning if you're on the West Coast. Excited for this conversation, political, a massive year as we head into what's going to be a lot of digital spending. I was just checking out that eMarketer is anticipating that in the digital space, there's going to be $3.46 billion of spend anticipated for the 2024 election season. And that's going to be an increase of almost 362% over last year. Not a big surprise, obviously. Big years for the national elections where we're going to see that bigger spend jump. But there's also anticipated to be massive spend specifically for connected television at rates we haven't seen in the past. It's amounting to close to $1.56 billion. So tons of spending taking place, a lot of growth for connected television. We've got two experts that are joining me today, both Albert Yu and Gabe Thomas. And before we dive into some questions, I'd love to just get a little brief intro from both of them. And maybe we'll kick it off starting with Gabe.
Yeah, thanks, Noor. It's ramping up to be a huge year for political ad spend. And I think at the same time, one of the things that we see is political ads themselves maybe getting a little bit more volatile, maybe seeing a little bit more spread in terms of ad quality, in terms of messaging. And so one of the things that we at Safe Exchange are very much focused on is how do we help publishers do that delineation? How do we help publishers find what you might consider it brand safety. We actually like to use the term ad safety because historically everything that's focused on brand safety is protecting advertisers from publishers and the environments they might run in. We want to look at how can we help publishers and actually their end users, the viewers, remain safe in a landscape where you have a pretty wide range of messaging in advertising, and how do we help publishers feel more comfortable, accept more of those types of ads, and get more of that connection between supply and demand going. And so we do a review on those sorts of ads to provide additional metadata, provide additional signals to publishers, and we integrate with platforms like Elemental, which is where Albert's from, and I'll hand over to you in a second, to help pass those tools and pass that data on to publishers. And so really excited to be speaking with you all, really excited to be talking about how we can help clean up the industry and the ecosystem a little bit and make it a little bit of a better experience for both advertisers and the end viewers here.
Fantastic. Albert, some intro from you.
A quick intro on my end. Thanks, Noor and Gabe. It's a very exciting time where we've seen a lot of political dollars come through in the past two election cycles in the CTV, and it's growing. The difference is as CTV matures, a lot of our publishers that Elemental works with are now kind of maturing as well. Early on days, it was very easy to access inventory regardless of ad quality. As Gabe said, we've seen ad quality of all sorts, and publishers back 5 years ago didn't really care. They were just trying to keep the lights on, trying to make as much yield as possible. But as they're maturing, they're now seeing, ad quality is important, just like the whole ad experience. So what we've encountered now is a lot less potential kind of inventory for questionable ad quality, and a lot of these publishers are now, hey, we want to protect our audiences, because if they leave, we're going to have to pay now a lot more user acquisition costs to bring more eyeballs back in. So we don't want to alienate them. We want to keep them on board. We don't want to have any bad ad experiences. And this applies to not just political, but all sorts of ads, because it is a programmatic ecosystem and it's very hard to police. And unless you have a queue of a bunch of ads sitting there ready to be approved, and a human needs to sit there, it's a really not a real possible endeavor to do without tools like AdCurate and an AI-driven solution. So and then this is from Elemental, speaking from a publisher side of the table. So hopefully we'll give some great perspectives as to why publishers are more concerned now more than ever for the ads that show up on their channels.
So on this,
just to quickly add to that, and I think, Albert, that's an amazing point. I think especially in the CTV space, where we're seeing more of the big players switch to streaming offerings, switch to CTV. They're recognizing that it's a premium format and deserves a premium ad experience, and they're becoming more prescriptive with what is their political strategy going to be in terms of what they accept. And unfortunately, because of current limitations in the ecosystem and in ad tagging and that sort of thing, a lot of publishers have just had to make the decision, publishers and platforms, that they're just not going to run political ads at all. They're just not going to touch it, because there isn't really a clean way to handle it. I think we've seen that from I might be mistaken here, but from Xandr as a platform. I think we've seen that from Samsung as a platform. It's easier to not touch it at all. But we know that it's a huge amount of ad spend, and so I know that this session had a really long title, but really at the heart of it, what we want to do is talk about how we can turn ad review and ad blocking from sort of a blunt instrument where, hey, I have to block all political, into something where you can be laser focused and really precise in terms of, hey, maybe there are parts to this vertical that make sense for my audience. How do I segment those out? How do I still run those? And how can we find those opportunities?
You both might have addressed some of these things in the introduction just now, but just to take people back, right? Because we know the Synopsys community is made up of many different types of people. Some folks are much more in the weeds, hands on keyboard. They're intimately knowledgeable of some of these challenges, and they're actively trying to reconcile and find solution providers like yourselves, amongst others. And then there's folks who are concerned and fearful, and sometimes we're not sure about what we're fearful about. So maybe we'll draw back on some of the things that have already been lightly touched upon. When you hear things from publishers who naturally are concerned about their audiences, but simultaneously want to take ads, what are you hearing from them? What are their core concerns? I know you mentioned some of the things. We don't want to be in content that we feel is going to not align with what our audiences are comfortable with, hence brand safety. But if you were to just pull back the onion layers a little bit more, what are people sharing with you? What are those core fears, if they're anything beyond what's already been described?
Yeah, so we actually have some really interesting data around that. If we could bring up, it might be a slide we have, but basically what we've done is we've looked at for I think the past 60 days, all the ads that are coming into AdCurate to get reviewed, to get data added to them. And what happens is especially in the programmatic ecosystem, advertisers will self-declare. They'll say, this ad is this type. It's an automotive ad, it's a CPG ad, it's a political ad. And that's the decisioning that publishers have to go off of. They have this single self-declared value that they have to say, okay, I will accept it or I won't. And what we find is that old school way of using a category level block list of saying, okay, I don't want politics, doesn't really work. And it doesn't really work for a few reasons. First of all, when we look at ads for the last 60 days, only 7.5% of them were, these are political ads specifically for the last 60 days, only 7.5% of them were correctly categorized as politics, which is a very low number. And so if you were to say, I want to make sure that I'm specifically looking at or specifically blocking politics, you have very little ability to do so in the current ecosystem with the current setup. An additional 40% of ads were more broadly categorized as government law and politics, which is sort of the overarching category. Now, this is good for if you want to do make sure you're catching political ads, put them in more of a general blocking list of looking at the overarching category. But then you run into the problem of overblocking. Suddenly, you're blocking all ads for law firms, for PSAs, for government services. And what we find is that within that large category, only about 30% of the ads are actually for political candidates, actually for political messaging. And so you're losing 70% of revenue from that category by having to use this broad, blunt instrument blocking type of saying anything that falls into this category. And unfortunately, this is what most publishers have to do today and what they are doing today. And it's causing a big constraint on CTV supply. And that's something we'll talk about in a little bit. And then these last two, I think, are the most interesting and concerning. So 20% of ads had the wrong category attached to them altogether. We see ads coming through for candidates. I think we saw some Nikki Haley ads coming through as Home and Garden. I think we saw some Joe Biden ads coming through as technology. We see them coming through as entertainment, as business. So folks are self-categorizing, and I think that there are definitely a lot of cases where it's just somebody that's running the campaign. They've got 1 million campaigns to manage, and they're just putting something in the box. But there are also a lot of cases where this is malicious. It's somebody trying to sneak through an ad where they know that it wouldn't be accepted otherwise. And so we're seeing this 20% of the time, which is a pretty large amount. If you are a publisher who says, I want to have a lockdown, I want to have control on what political ads are running on my platform. And then lastly, 32% of ads that are political ads just didn't even have a category at all. And so that makes it so you can't you really can't control for it. You could say, I don't want any ads that don't have a category, but then again, you're losing a ton of revenue. And so being able to get, I think, a little bit more prescriptive and drill into these categories is really where we want to get to as an industry, where we can say, hey, I'm recognizing now there is actually a huge problem with the way that we've been doing this all along. There is a problem with the status quo of saying, I'm either going to lose a bunch of revenue, or I'm going to take ads that are purposely miscategorized, ads that especially in this election are talking more than ever about sensitive topics like guns, about reproductive rights, about immigration, things that can really I would say upset or alienate an audience. And Albert, I think there was a really good point you made, that user acquisition costs are really high for these streaming services, and they don't want to risk losing their users over them seeing something that is upsetting to them. So I think really what we want to do is spread this message that we're in a sort of a self-made hard place by trying to solve a problem in a way that doesn't really work anymore. And now there's technology providers like our own, but we're certainly not the only folks that are doing it, that are starting to go out and say, okay, how can we actually look at the content of these ads? How can we look at some of the pieces beyond just is it a political ad? Is it a political ad of a certain type of candidate? Is it a political ad that has a specific sentiment? Is it a positive ad? Is it an attack ad? Does it have negative wording? And then what are the actual topics being talked about? Is the ad talking about taxes? Is it talking about the environment, or is it talking about guns? Is it talking about reproductive rights? Is there upsetting imagery? Can you see are there scenes of war in the creative itself? And so by being able to, one, correctly identify, okay, this is a political ad, and two, be able to say, okay, now I know more about, is it just a political ad or not, but I know what is actually going on in the ad. You can set up a real-time sort of profile and say, okay, as a publisher, I am okay with these things. I'm not okay with these things. And suddenly, instead of having to turn off the whole category of politics, you can be confident that political ads that don't match your audience are getting blocked, and political ads that you're fine with are actually coming through. They're earning revenue for you as a publisher. As an advertiser, you're able to see more scale. And so, it's I think a whole new, much smarter way of doing things that we couldn't have done previously without the advancements in AI we have. And we're really excited to bring it out to market and to work with political advertisers and publishers with concerns about politics and generally sort of spread across the ecosystem. And I just sort of talked at everyone for a little bit. So, Albert, I definitely want to hand it over to you for a little bit and let you wax on this topic a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Gabe. You made some great points, and having that slide up is very important. What we've seen is exactly what Gabe has shared. Across not just political, but across all sorts of ads. Due to the self kind of policing, self certification of what tagging, on the buy side, what these ads are, either by category or even who the actual advertiser is. Oftentimes they're incorrectly placed, and I can probably explain how 40% of those broadly categorized ads that come in as government, law, and politics, but a portion of that is political, and that only 7.5% are actually represents political, is because a lot of the buyers may be, hey, I need some scale, I'm pumping it as politics, not getting the scale I want. Let me go roll into a bigger category, so I can get squeeze through there, because the publishers are not saying this is a bad advertising IAB category. So it's a very interesting place in this programmatic space that we live in, where everything is scanned, not contextually with AI, but through kind of just flags, put into the different ad requests and bid requests, where you want to block things, and there's a lot of it's ripe for miscategorization or incorrect categorization, and where our publishers have been asking about is, hey, how do I the simplest one is, I'm not seeing any advertiser categories or advertiser names, and I'm not willing to take the chance of not knowing who the advertiser is or what the category is. Because as a publisher, you want to have the capability to deduplicate ads, so you're not showing a back-to-back ad for the same advertiser. And also, you don't want to, hey, I did a deal with Ford, and now some programmatic ad comes in where you're saying, Ford, I'm not going to put you next to another automotive ad, and it comes in incorrectly or blank as an advertiser, and you're now showing a Ford and a Chevy ad. So there's a lot of these things that are happening at the moment, and publishers are kind of at the mercy of what's actually coming in through these programmatic requests and ad requests, ad responses. So there's there really needs to be amazing innovative tools like what AdCurate has in terms of using AI to really scan through the creative, figure out what the actual categorization is, and through our integrations, we're able to take what they scan, and all that contextual metadata, and replace it and fill in the gaps and correct it when it goes to the publisher, so the publishers are able to fully activate the revenue that they could be missing. So that's a very important thing to think about, is publishers are having issues with these ads coming in incorrect. It's screwing up kind of their direct sales, as well as potentially, alienating, infuriating their audiences. And there needs to be a better solution. And this is kind of where this whole AI innovation is really kind of unlocking that potential, because the alternative is someone on the ad ops team has a queue of 200 ads, and they're going to have to watch every one of them and approve them. So I don't think
try
that's
1,000 ads.
1,000 ads. So it's very painful, and we have a real life example in not quite CTV, but this one is very telling. Is there are these screens at gyms. These gyms try to remove all political, anything that can be really get people upset. And there was as Gabe said, there was a Nikki Haley ad that came in, and it really got a lot of folks actually getting off of their workout equipment and complaining to the management staff. And for the folks who run advertisements on very sensitive places, where they want to keep it safe and inclusive, it's very important to have tools like this to really clean up the ad quality that comes through. So yeah, that's I guess that's all I have to add to this.
So I have a point or two other questions I want to ask, but first there's an audience question over here that I want to add into the mix, and we'll just have hopefully a little bit of a punchier answer on this one, guys, so we can get through a couple of these. Here's an audience question. It is, could you just limit your programmatic and migrate anyone categorized to political as a direct buy campaign to limit those different security concerns or risks?
So that's a really great question, and thanks for sharing that, Nor. And this kind of goes back to the ability to actually understand if something is political or not. And so when you see those 50-something% of ads that are political they're identifying something else, they're not identifying at all. You're not able to you don't have a good mechanism to pick those out of your programmatic stream and convert those into direct campaigns, because you don't even know what they are and you don't have the ability to do so without a AI-driven solution that can go through and actively find those and flag them. By the same vein, partners say, can I just get rid of programmatic altogether? Programmatic advertising, especially in the political space, is a huge amount of money. And so, yes, technically you can do it, but if you're a publisher and you're trying to maximize revenue from this segment, I think it would be a very, very foolish thing to do. And so, by being able to work with a partner that can effectively find and segment political ads in real time, you're still able to capture that revenue, and you're able to do so in a safe way.
Thanks for that, Gabe. Anything to add on top of that, Albert, or do we want to move into another question?
I think Gabe answered it very well. So yeah, for sure.
So I think, we have a couple more minutes together. I just want to ask this, right? You gave these examples of times, especially Albert, you gave the example of a scenario in a digital out-of-home activation where people were looking at something, they didn't like it, it didn't sit well with them, they were expecting it to be an inclusive space. And then there's a lot of pushback and pain for that, digital out-of-home company. So this is a concern of a lot of advertisers, and maybe they're listening to everything that you're saying and it sounds good, but there's still fear, right? Even Facebook messes up, right? Like they have a lot of real life people who are involved in creating brand safe spaces. And then there are tons of problems. So if there are any remaining reluctancies, as I've listened to everything that you've said, how do I feel comfortable with confidence that I would want to go ahead and test with solutions like the ones you're describing?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of comfort, I think that's one of the really strong reasons to involve AI in the process. We've seen very, very high efficacy rates in terms of the data coming out of our AI. We actually have a hybrid approach of humans and AI because neither are perfect, and together we sort of have this, I would say, total ability to find and classify ads. But the modern advancements in AI have really made this step into 2024 now, and the ability to real time immediately say hey, that's looking at computer vision, looking at what's in the ad. Is that a gun on screen? Looking at the audio track. Is somebody swearing in the ad? And looking at the click through URL, combining all this data together to very quickly be able to make a determination. The other thing I want to quickly touch on is we've talked entirely focused on the publisher, how publishers might be concerned, how publishers can still make revenue, but understanding that there's concern for advertisers as well. I know that Albert mentioned, if you're an advertiser, you want to be certain not just of the content you're running against, but the other ads you're running against. And so working with publishers that have this sort of real-time solution, you can be very comfortable knowing that you're not going to run next to an ad with very offensive language and have sort of that brand connection to whoever's running next in your ad pod. And similarly, we see a huge crunch in terms of supply volume. Suddenly, if you're working with supply partners that have this sort of review, not only do you have the additional safety, but suddenly all new supplies open up to you. A partner that might have previously blocked all political ads, now they are accepting half of political ads. And for certain messaging, you have a whole new set of users to target, a whole new set of apps to run in. So there's a lot of benefit and a lot of safety, both on the advertiser and the publisher side. I know that we're coming up quickly on time, but Albert, I wanted to hand it off to you real fast.
Yeah, I think it's, the fear is always there in the Wild West of the programmatic space. As you've seen, it is a self-attestation of categories and what you fill in. And, there's always going to be some rogue ad that can come through, but having this AI layer really reduces. It's never going to be 100%, but it's going to be getting you very close to, having that really ad safe environment. So, I'll leave it as that. There's, having, AdCurate and technology like that is really a game changer for these publishers.
Thank you guys both. The time flew by really quick, and I know things need to move on to the next session, but I always think the year flies by faster than you expect, and so is this election cycle. Exploring technologies as soon as you can is a smart thing to do, so don't let 2024 pass you by without doing that due diligence and exploring technologies like this one. Thank you guys for joining this session. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Noor, for that really great final comment, as well as to Gabe and Albert. And next, I am happy to introduce Kyle Roberts. Kyle is the CEO of AdImpact, and he's going to dive in a little bit more into the weeds about how to take advantage of the billions of dollars that are swirling around during this election cycle. So please join me, Kyle, and take it away.
So I will proceed with my presentation. I'm happy to be here this afternoon to discuss political ad spend. I hope this topic is helpful for the community. I was just listening to the previous panel, and I could hear people wanting to exclude political ads. Unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that there's going to be more political ads than ever before in the 2024 cycle. And what I'd like to share with you is just some research that I've done. I'll cover a bunch of topics here. First, I'm going to look at historical political ad spend from previous cycles, and then I'm going to take you into 2023 and talk about just political ad spend and how it compares to other odd years. So when I say odd years, I'm talking about 2021 and 2019, the off years. I'll look at cash on hand for some of the committees. I'll give you a breakdown of spend by media type. I'll talk about a large ballot initiative from 2023, and then I'll just run a little comparison about CTV versus linear TV. So again, my name's Kyle Roberts. I'm the president and CEO of a company called AdImpact. What do? We capture essentially 99.9% of all political ads in the United States. We detect political advertising in all 210 DMAs pretty much in real time. Each day we go into every single market in the country. We search for the political ads, we fingerprint them, and then we track them. We track them on broadcast, track them on cable, and we track them across connected devices as well. So I'm going to share just a bunch of historical information about what we do. Hopefully you can see this second slide here. Yep. Okay, great. So as you look back for 2016, you see that the political space was about a $2.6 billion market. And then you fast forward to 2024, and we predict that there'll be approximately 10 billion in ad spend, 10.2 billion in ad spend for the 2024 cycle. You can see between 16 and 18, an increase of about 1.4 billion, and then it jumps to 9 billion, and it's kind of hovered now in this sort of range of roughly 9 to 10 billion. Okay, so if I want to take a look at and say, well, how does the pacing look? Now, I'm going to give you actual data here from 2023. There's only a few months in 2024, so it's not perfect. I figured I'd give you a full 12-month snapshot of what the 2023 elections look like. And I would compare it. Here's 2023. I'll compare it to 2021 in terms of volume of advertising. The dollars that you're looking at, the spending that I'm putting up on the screen covers linear broadcast, linear cable. It covers radio. It covers satellite. It covers connected TV. So it's as comprehensive as we can find. It also covers digital too, which is essentially all the information that is uploaded to the Google and Facebook transparency reports. All right, so in 2023, how did it compare to 2021 in terms of spending? In 2023, in 2021, it kind of tapped out at about 1.3 billion. And the 2023 cycle tapped out at about 1.42 billion. So we saw about 100 million more in 2023 versus 2021. This is the spending in 2019. This is the spending in 2017, and this is the spending here in 2015. So these are just totals as I'm showing you, just to give you a picture of the overall environment. Who were some of the biggest advertisers in 2023? It was groups like SFA, which is a super PAC, Never Back Down, another large super PAC, MAGA Inc., another large super PAC, and a large ballot initiative, the Ohioans for Reproductive Rights, just to give you an idea of who was spending a lot of money on politics in 2023. If I look at, well, how did broadcast do in 2023 versus previous cycles? Broadcast overall spend came in at about 571 million. That's how it finished out in 2023. And in 2021, it was about 537 million. It was about a $34 million difference on broadcast. But you can see the pace of advertising across the cycles. Now look at cable. Cable was different than broadcast. Broadcast increased between 2021 and 2023. Cable actually decreased. Cable in 2021, which is the green here, came in at approximately 419 million. And you had really big advertisers. Facebook spent a lot of money actually in political advertising in 2021. AARP did, Partnership to Fight Chronic Disease, the American Petroleum Institute. They were all lead spenders back then. Those spenders actually didn't show up in 2023. And cable revenue in 2023 for politics totaled out at about 293 million. So overall, between 21 and 23, you saw about a 30% drop for political ad spend in cable. It's not an indicator for 2024 at all. It's just really how the off cycle played out. If I look at, so 2023 is a lead up to a presidential year. 2019 was a lead up to a presidential year. In 2019, you had major billionaires running for president. You had Mike Bloomberg, you had Tom Steyer, and they themselves, Bloomberg himself was north of $500 million in ad spend. So one individual didn't really raise a lot of money, but spent a lot of money. How does that compare to the 2023 cycle where you had, a presidential race play out, and you had a lot of super PACs come in and try to support and oppose candidates in that sense? So I thought I would just show you a little trend on that. So basically in 2019, it was about $1 billion even was the total spend. And it was mainly presidential, of course. But in 2023, it actually increased even though you didn't have billionaires. It rang in at roughly 1.4 billion total. So even though you don't have these large donor or these large billionaires running, there's still a tremendous amount of political activity without that. So one thing I thought I would do here is just trend out, again, I'm still in these odd number years just to run the comparisons clean. How much was spent, 2019 between 2023? How many airings, how many ads actually aired? How many unique ads did political campaigns run? So we thought we'd put this slide together and share some of this data. You can see it's 48% growth on spend between 2019 and 2023. There was a 41% increase in the number of airings between 2019 and 2023. So we tracked 1.2 million airings in 2023 versus 793,000. And look at the number of unique ads. You had 2,100 versus 3,500. Unique ads, increased significantly. You can see over time, there's more dollars coming into the system. There's more advertisers in the system. That translates into more ads and translates into more ad activity. So this is a slide. Now this is what you're looking at, a couple of just one data point in terms of cash on hand. So if you go to the Federal Election Commission, you look at Q3 2023. I go back and I look, well, how much cash on hand did these committees have in 19 versus 21 and versus 2023? And what you see is that actually overall cash on hand between the major committees, it was 159 million, then it dropped to, it increased to 310, and then it dropped now to 133. Now that's just 1/4 of data, cash on hand. When I say the committees, I'm talking about the Republican National Committee, the Democrat National Committee, the major ones. These committees either run major advertising campaigns or get out the vote campaigns, etc. You see two trends in the data set. First trend you see is that overall cash on hand between 19 and 23 has actually gone down. And then when you look at by party ID, who has more or less cash on hand, you see back in 19, Republicans had more cash on hand than Democrats. And in versus 2023, now the shift has gone to Democrats with more cash on hand and lower cash on hand for Republicans. It's basically, this was a 60-40 split with Republicans having the advantage back in 19. Now it's a 60-40 split in 23 with Democrats having the advantage. So that's changed. And the question becomes, well, why is that changing? What's happening there? And so what I did was I looked at super PAC spending between 2016 and 2022. And when you look at how much the PACs are spending, and they don't necessarily have to file the same disclosures that the committees do, they're under more scrutiny. When you look at their spending, if I look at like all the PACs, the major PACs together in 2016 versus 2018, there was about a 56% increase in overall spend. In 2016, the major PACs spent $240 million, $250 million on advertising. In 2018, it jumped to $365 million. In 2020, it jumped to $746 million. And in 2022, it increased to $800 million. So when you go back to 2016, you compare it to 2022, you're looking almost a 4x increase. So it's very large. And because the PACs now are taking over so much more of the advertising, you see the committees are having less influence. So what else can I show you here? So I'm looking to show you here now media type by spend. I've got a couple of slides. Back in 2020, we looked at CTV spend. We actually didn't track it in 2020. We think it was approximately 750 million from some of the data we collected, but we couldn't verify that, so we didn't use the number publicly. So in 2020, we didn't really clock any CTV spend. We saw digital was 1.7 billion. We saw satellite was about 110 million. Radio was 360 million. Cable 1.6 billion. And broadcast 5.2 billion. So the digital piece itself, I want to be very specific about it. The 1.7 billion we collected was from Facebook and Google only. We go into the transparency reports, we collect all the data in there, we collect all the advertisers, all the campaigns, all the spend per campaign. You put all that together, and that's what that number comes up to. So that doesn't include like a programmatic, and it doesn't include all that other activity that you just can't capture. We capture it now, but we couldn't capture it back then. I want to be clear about that to the group. Cable, we're always tracking what's the linear share of the political business. In 2020 was about a 17% share, and in broadcast was about a 57% share. So the next slide, media type spending for 2022. we were able to track CTV, and we can document at least $1 billion in CTV ad spend. So 2020, nothing. 2022, we start tracking it, and it clocks in at $1 billion. Digital was 1.2 billion. The previous slide, it was 1.7. You had a drop of $700 million. Again, that was among Facebook and Google. Mainly the reasons for that are the platform removed a lot of its advanced targeting, and campaigns decided to just go other places. Satellite, 800 million, less than 100 million, always usually hovers in that number. Radio always hovers in the 300 million range. Cable, like I was saying on the previous slide, it had a 17 share. On this slide, it has a 19 share in 2022. So it jumped 2 points. Broadcast dropped from a 57 share to a 53 share. Cable actually saw a real dollar increase between 2020 and 2022 from 1.6 billion to 1.7 billion. The next slide is media type spending for 2024. So this is our prediction. We are, publicly out there saying that there will be 10.2 billion spent, and this is how we believe that money will be allocated. Previous slide, I said CTV was $1 billion. We think it'll be 1.3 billion. Digital was just north of $1 billion. We think it'll be about 1.18 billion this time. So a slight increase. We think the presidential campaigns will use Facebook a little more for fundraising. And there are, Twitter is now back accepting political advertising. We're starting to track that because they do have a transparency report. And so we think there will be some additional activity there. So we're predicting slight growth on the digital side. Satellite again stays in that 100 million range. Radio stays in the 300 to 400 million range. Cable on the previous slide we had at 1.7. We think it will jump to 2.1 billion. Cable we think will grow from a 19 share to a 21 share. Broadcast, it's going to see about 250 million in overall increase in net dollars, but we actually think its share of the business will drop from 53% to 50%. So this slide right here, a lot of the data I just showed you was all 2023 data and comparing to previous time periods. This is the actual prediction for 2024 that we are public with. We will update this prediction as we see fit over time, as we track all the political ad spend activity. This slide just shows between 1921 and 2023. It's the share of dollars that each media type received. Broadcast in 2023 was about 41%, kind of trended historically to the other off years. Cable fluctuated. It saw a bump, as I had mentioned earlier, in 2021 of about 31%, but it hovers in that 20% range. And then digital fluctuates. In the off year, it's much, much higher share because a lot of campaigns use it for fundraising. But then as they move fundraising dollars into persuasion dollars, you see the share of digital dollars decrease or just reallocate. So that's the overall just share for 2023. So you can just see some actual numbers. I had sort of referenced this earlier. This was something we didn't anticipate in 2023, but with the Dobbs decision and now with a lot of states deciding to put abortion on the ballot as a referendum, you're going to see a lot of activity around that. We think in 2024, in 2023, with the Ohio issue, it was a $70 million ballot initiative. We tracked the Democrat spending, all Democrat advertisers totaling out at about 41 million versus 28 million on Republican spend. But it was fairly significant. And when you look at overall share of dollars, again, you see broadcast kind of hover in that 50% range. You see cable again hover in that 20% range. So, and then the other thing that we see, though, is that CTV was a significant piece of the overall spend, too, 20% range. So that was much larger than we had anticipated. And so the one thing we're thinking about, and on the next slide here, is what is coming up in 2024. We know that Maryland and New York will have ballot initiatives we'll have ballot initiatives around the issue of abortion in 2024. There are also states where it's proposed. This slide was written back in November, so some of these might have actually made the ballot. I don't know. But the thing to think about that we've been talking to people about is you really need to look at, just on the next slide, is how much is getting spent by state. And if, not how much is going to get spent by state, but if those states are swing states with, abortion on the ballot, they could see an enormous concentration of political activity in terms of advertising spend. Arizona is a swing state. Nevada is a swing state. Pennsylvania is a swing state. Florida is not necessarily a swing state, but if it does show up on the ballot, there will be significant advertising dollars pro and against. Other states, Nebraska, South Dakota, certainly will have activity, but we think there could be, if all these make it, this could be easily $500 to $600 million in additional funds in the 2024 election. I've just got 2 more slides. I'm going to close just to give you a little comparison. We like to, because we detect both linear and nonlinear ad activity, we can go into our data set and look and see, just ask basic questions like, how long does an average political campaign keep a broadcast spot on air? In the far left column, you can see it's about 13.6 days that a average campaign runs a spot on broadcast or linear. And when you look at connected TV, or what we call ATV, advanced TV, it's about 10 days more, roughly, about 22 days. So campaigns are using these things, each medium slightly differently. The distinct ads on the right, how many unique ads are running on broadcast versus CTV? It's interesting. When we started tracking this number, connected TV had a lot more distinct ads. Now it's sort of evened out between linear and connected TV. We tracked about 3,300 uniques versus, it was almost the same. A lot of people ask, well, why would you run more? Why would you run a spot on connected TV longer than you would on linear? And it's, there are of course, two different mediums in terms of how reach, right? Broadcast is a one-to-many, and connected TV is a one-to-one. And because it's one-to-one, and because most of campaigns do first-party data match on their targeting, it takes time to scale audience. And you can see here from the data set that it's about, roughly 10 days more. I'm looking at a lot of ads in aggregate here. It's not one specific campaign. That's roughly 10 days more in order to scale, to get to an impression level where you feel like the creative has delivered enough reach and frequency where you can switch it out. So I'll just close out here with my last slide, just on some takeaways. Overall, right, what's the most important thing I'm trying to communicate? I think there'll be about $10.2 billion spent in the entire 2024 cycle. Connected TV, we do believe will see significant growth. When we first started tracking it, it was at $1 billion. Now we think it'll be 1.3. It could go as high as 1.5, 1.7. We'll be tracking that. We will be updating our prediction accordingly. And since the Dobbs decision, really, if you're a seller and you're in some of these states where it could appear on the ballot, it's probably going to be significant dollars that will show up in your market. So that concludes my presentation. I'll stop the screen share, and I'm happy to answer any questions or converse with the panelists. Thank you.
Hey, Kyle. So lovely presentation, and wrapping it up with CTV was really perfect because you're teeing up Keith Norman well. But we do have a few questions from the audience. One is, when will you start tracking all political media spend, including influencer marketing, promotional products, and other marketing media? The pressure's
That's
on.
a good. Well, that's a whole new product line I got to come out with. It's a good question.
Yeah. Hello.
It's a good question. We truthfully, we're really in the video space. That's what we're doing. We're trying to track all video activity. And the influencer space is a little more complicated for us. And, a lot of those feeds now have been turned off. So you can't get access to them as you could in the past. I mean, I know Twitter specifically and Facebook, we had access to their host, to their APIs. They don't do that anymore. So the data coming out of them just isn't as rich. So it's hard to return. Without modeling heavily, it's very hard to return, for us at least, some quality product, I would say.
Sounds like an opportunity for someone, perhaps.
Definitely an opportunity. It is.
We're out of time, but I'm still going to ask you this question. Is there a way to find out who is spending and placing all this media, not just total ad spend?
Absolutely. We track, yes, by advertiser, by specific campaign. We've got 6,000 campaigns right now we're tracking, and you can break it out by individual. Yes, we can do that. Absolutely. It's very high level what I shared with you, but yes, we have the individual spenders.
And I'm going to ask you one last question. Will the average presidential spend be lower this election because both candidates already have recognition? And if so, will we see more down race spending? I'm going to say yes, but that's just my opinion.
We think presidential will be higher.
Aha.
Now, when you look, we're predicting 12% growth. So we think there'll be about $1 billion more in the environment this year than in previous environments. We think presidential will increase, but you are seeing a lot more down ticket activity. State House races, attorneys general, secretary of state. These are now serious advertisers. The other trend you are seeing is a U.S. House race, on average would be $2 to $3 million. There were 25 House races that spent over $10 million.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's an enormous amount. And as you look at like how many toss-ups will follow, how many toss-up House races and how many toss-up Senate races, there's a lot of toss-ups on the House side. So we predict that the House spending actually will increase this cycle as well because they're so competitive.
Well, Kyle, this sounds good. And we're going to call you back in December and we're going to see how much of your predictions actually came to pass. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. It was really terrific. Many thanks to Ad Impact. And next up is the one and only Keith Norman. Keith is the VP of the political practice at LG Ad Solutions. And as I said earlier, he is going to be talking about using CTV to reach voters during this very critical election season. So welcome, Keith, and delighted to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Hey, Robbie. And thanks so much for convening this great event. Really smart and insightful presenters so far, including Kyle and Noor at Basis, to name a couple. We have a partnership with Basis this cycle here at LG Ad Solutions. But all your presenters, tough acts to follow. I'll be doing my best to follow them with a close out here to a great event. As you mentioned, Keith Norman, VP of the political practice here at LG Ad Solutions. I lead a dedicated and experienced political sales and support team here at LG. We work with dozens of political marketers already. Look forward to working with many more of you out there. And we really are here to help you best leverage CTV and win more of your electoral and issue advocacy campaigns this cycle. Kyle's team always has great data. Kyle always brings it with him and the insights along with it. And so my goal really for the next 20 minutes is to share some additional data, building off of what you saw in the spending data and some of what's going to be driving that spending from Kyle. The data that I have to share is from a recent voter survey that we fielded and from another, a number of other CTV and media studies that we've done or seen here at LG over the last several months. I hope that all of this will provide some actionable insights for you and strategies that you can leverage with the opportunities that CTV presents this cycle, as well as overcoming some of the challenges that CTV presents, especially with the ubiquity of streaming and the availability on some services, but not all, for ad placement. So without further ado, I am going to share a few slides and get into what the the data is that I've prepared for everyone today. So developing a CTV strategy to reach voters in 2024. Let's go. What we're going to talk about is likely voters preferring streaming TV. Second point is 88% of CTV users are watching streaming TV with others, so we'll get into some co-viewing. Third is CTV users are willing to change their minds, and half will reconsider who they are planning to vote for when presented with new information. And four, political ads, especially on CTV, drive action, including discussing issues and candidates with friends and family, performing additional research, and even donating to campaigns or getting involved in campaigns and field work in other ways. Getting into the data, first here we see from a TV viewing habit survey from a few months ago that the types of television watched currently 73% in the survey say subscription streaming, that's including ad-free and ad-light services. 51% are using free streaming, and most of that, if not all, is with ads now, fast channels, as we've all heard quite a bit about of late. 41% are watching TV with good old cable and satellite, and 18% are watching over the air. What we see here is that cable still holds a nice edge for that way of viewing when it comes to sports, yet streaming is gaining ground, including as a co-viewing activity. Millions tuned into Thursday Night Football on a streaming service this year. Millions also tuned into a playoff game on a streaming service this year. So again, cable, in particular satellite as well, still has a nice hold on the sports viewer, but streaming is gaining traction, and even more so when it comes to co-viewing. As you see, the delta between cable and satellite and streaming there is only 10 points. Diving into our voter survey from last quarter, one of the first takeaways that is important to point out is 65% of likely voters prefer streaming to linear TV. There's some reasons for that. There's quite a bit of control that we have as streaming viewers. We can watch what we want and when we want to, and watch it again if we choose. And then we also found in our Big Shift survey that 63% of viewers prefer to stream free content rather than paying for a subscription. Some of that has to do with subscription fatigue. There is quite a bit of fatigue as it relates to the number of subscription services household budgets can support now. And so you see, again, the rise of free content, fast channels coming into play this cycle. Also in our voter survey, we found that 82% of likely voters are streaming with ads and are receptive to political ads outside of political content. So for those who are building their media plans and thinking news as very, traditionally with linear TV, a great, day part, a great program to place ads within that lean in content that news provides. What we see with streaming is, again, almost half are really open to seeing ads in entertainment content as well, movies, TV shows, even our favorite reality shows, which I'm sure each of us has our own favorite show. The other takeaway we see from the voter survey, which continuing here, we talked about a little bit already, is co-viewing. So we see that 88% of likely voters who are streaming are watching with others. And we see, as it relates to paying attention, which is really important, we know that ads are not cheap, and we know that buys are we try to provide as efficient opportunities to buy as we can. We know buys can also be at a premium, especially with premium content. But what we see here in the survey is that streaming voters, likely voters, are paying more attention to content when they're co-viewing, and are paying 54% more attention to ads when co-viewing. And we see that number over-indexing with streaming as it relates to CTV versus linear as a plus 13% with those two options for, again, attention with regards to content and ads. Here's the money slide. And what this shows is likely voters who are streaming are open to having their minds changed. We've got 50% who say they are open. And then as it relates to the ads themselves, 53% believe that political ads help inform who the candidates are and what they stand for. And then 40% agree that political ads help inform them about the issues at stake. So what you're seeing with the voter survey and some of the key data takeaways from that is we've got, again, a ubiquity of streaming now. We have a vast majority who are streaming ad supported, who are choosing to watch on ad supported streaming more and more. Again, a lot of subscription fatigue and just households finding what they want. The quality of ad supported streaming and fast channels really increasing over the last couple of years and getting into this cycle. And a lot of also what we looked at here in the voter survey and the other surveys that I've brought some highlights from has been national. I want to take a moment and go into some statewide data from Georgia in particular, because I know that Georgia, I've heard at least Kyle and others talking about how much Georgia will be in play this cycle up and down the ballot. And what we see here in Georgia is 32% in the state of Georgia, and this is from MAR Simmons, they are streaming only voters. 7% are linear only. They're watching anywhere from 0 to 7 hours of traditional TV. And then there's an overlap of 60% who are using both streaming and linear. Sticking with what I've talked about already quite a bit is ad-supported streaming and is TV for those Georgia voters, where we see 85% are watching streaming apps with ads. So in the state of Georgia, you can see some of the other data there. This is very similar to data that we have here at LG Ad Solutions for all states and many DMAs with similar takeaways. About a third of voters are streaming only. More than half are watching streaming and linear TV together. And the vast majority who are watching streaming are doing so with services that carry ads. Interestingly enough, here also on this slide is you see on the bottom right, on the left side there is almost half of Georgia voters are cordless, have never had or have cut the cable, cut the cord. A lot of what now is an opportunity with these voters also can present some challenges. And so political marketers who lean into streaming and want to use and leverage the strengths of a direct-to-glass CTV strategy that includes ACR data, which we provide here at LG, as a number of other OEMs provide as well. And there's differences with that ACR data, which I'll get into. But really the strengths of this CTV strategy as we pivot from some of the survey takeaways into strategies and tactics now in the presentation here. This is to enable better targeting, better management of campaigns, and better evaluations of performance. And as it relates to how this ACR data and the strengths of CTV can be employed, here at LG, we can track any content and ads that hit our 40 million US connected TV screens. So whether it be via an HDMI device, a dongle, if you will, a gaming console, linear TV, our LG fast channels, streaming apps, we collect all that data and we roll all that data up into deterministic audience data, which can be employed in a number of ways. So that's the first strength of a direct-to-glass strategy. Advanced targeting is the second strength here, and having that data and knowing what the voter viewing habits are and their behaviors are, whether, again, they're watching on linear or streaming or both, that data can really inform competitive targeting strategies, can help with incremental reach, linear suppression, among others. And then when it comes to measuring the ROI with most campaigns and the importance of efficiency and outcomes, that ACR data that we have here at LG in particular is a one-to-one set of data where there's no modeling, provides really precise accuracy. And again, all that is to drive better results and measurable outcomes for political marketers. As it relates to tactics, utilizing the strength of CTV, the tactics that I'll talk about a little bit here today, and there are several, but we'll get into some frequency management, relevant creative, and enhanced ads. By the way, I'm going to do my best to leave some time for Q&A at the end, and we can have a conversation about some of this as we wrap up here at the end of my presentation at the end of the event. So regarding frequency management, what we find in the MRI Simmons study and the viewer attention study is that more than 3 in 5 agree that TV ads are repeated too often, whether it be on linear or on CTV. As it relates to CTV optimal frequency, what we see here is exposures 1 through 15, the frequency effectiveness and attention is pretty high. It starts to fall off when you get 16 plus exposures and get into that type of frankly saturation, which can be common among some streaming services. So you want to work with a streaming provider that can help you, again, using ACR data here at LG in particular, to inform and best optimize frequency so you don't get into that that overexposing of those ads. So again, managing frequency when ads are no longer driving lift, you want to try to avoid. Another tactic, again, is relevant creative with the CTV strategy. What we found in our survey is that likely voters prefer political ads that contain issue or candidate information. Specific issues or topics is highest, as well as candidates' accomplishments. The candidates themselves is also highly preferred. And then endorsements, less so. So again, when thinking about creative and building creative for streaming audiences and streaming voters in particular, these are some of the elements to keep in mind. Also, as it relates to creative, there is an inverse relationship between attention and ad duration, especially as it relates to 30s and even more so with 60s. So making the first 15 seconds, making those first 15 seconds impactful and informative and getting the gist of your message out is really important. And again, as you can see the data there, the length of the creative and the attention index starts to fall off with 30s a little bit, and certainly with 60s. Not to say that there isn't a reason sometimes to run 60s. We certainly do see 60s with political and issue advocacy ads. But you can see here, again, the takeaway being the first 15 seconds, regardless of the length of the ad, is what's most critical. Enhanced ads. So again, the ability with a connected TV platform now is the tactic to use. One of the abilities is the tactic to do more than just run a 30-second spot. And with the ubiquity of not just connected TV viewing, but cross-device viewing and multitasking, which I'll get into some data on that front in a moment, you've got the opportunities to go beyond the traditional spot. So when creating an ad, one of the actions that is most likely to happen after someone sees the ad is they discuss it with family and friends. They research what they discussed. They register to vote, they donate to a political cause, or they communicate with a political representative. What you can use to drive those actions is this enhanced ad example we have here on the right, where you can pull the ad back. You can use a lower third to include some additional information about voting in this case. You can use the right third to insert a QR code. That QR code can connect voters to a candidate's website, drive donations, or in this case, find a polling location. And again, a lot of this is possible now with creating enhanced ads, and the outcome of those ads running on connected TV is better than ever with the adoption and the multitasking that's occurring in many households. So what you see here is from the Big Shift Wave 2 survey we did last fall. Viewers are multitasking at incredibly high rates. 96% multitask with mobile device or a laptop when watching TV. 2/3 are always or often multitasking. So one of the tactics that you can use, knowing this now, is a cross-device tactic. So starting with a message on the big glass with a direct TV, a direct-to-glass strategy, starting with the message on the big glass and then retargeting to smaller screens to drive actions is a really smart tactic. Wrapping up now with key takeaways, and we'll have a few minutes, I believe, for some Q&A. Number one, ensure your advertising strategy involves streaming. Wouldn't be a surprise coming from the VP of LG Ad Solutions to say that, but the data bears it out. 65% of likely voters prefer streaming now. CTV users are open to having their minds change and think political ads serve as a valuable source of information. Considering the actions that political spots can drive, using dynamic creative like enhanced ads for connecting viewers and voters to websites, to volunteer, join a list, or donate is really smart. And then, again, having the ability to partner with a direct-to-glass streaming provider such as LG really helps to leverage the ACR data that's available to better target, to better manage campaign reach and frequency, and to evaluate performance. So I'll stop there for what I prepared, and we'll have some time for Q&A, I believe, Robbie.
Hey, Keith. Yeah, thanks for that. That was really interesting, especially hearing that people have their minds open, so you can really see the kind of crucial role that advertising can play. Okay, here's a question. What challenges should political ad buyers keep in mind when they start to buy CTV? And I know you've been talking about this, but it's clearly striking a chord.
Yeah. So, you want to ensure when working with a CTV provider, streaming partner, or considering working with them, that you're using someone who has good data. I mean, so many political campaigns, so many elections, so many votes on ballot initiatives we know are won or lost in the margins. So, having that first party data that a provider like us with ACR, can be really helpful. Having that data that can inform, again, behaviors of voters and viewers, what they're watching, what they've seen, what they haven't seen. Have they seen the competitor's ad yet? Have they not seen that competitor's ad? That's really helpful. So ensuring a partner can provide you some level of advantage with first party data is as one recommendation. Two, having that partner effectively match your first party data, bringing that voter list to that partner, making sure that there is scale at a effective level in that partner's reach. Not every partner has the reach that others do. So really asking about the reach and what the match can be you can expect with a first party list. Thirdly, you want trusted third party data. So not every campaign has the first party list to employ. Not every campaign may even have the first party ACR data that they want to employ. So having trusted third party data from the major data providers in the market that most of us know by name, you want to make sure that your partner, your streaming partner, has those third party data partners available for you to activate against. Data. I'll pause there for a moment, catch my breath, and move into inventory and content. you want to ensure, Robbie, that you are in a safe, that your message is running in safe, well-lit content, whether that be live content, which many streaming services offer, of course, or on-demand content. You really want to avoid being in a long tail, might be efficient, might be very cheap on a CPM basis, but you really want to stay away from that long tail content that's out there. And then as it relates to, again, good, safe, well-lit content and finding those providers that can provide you that, you want to look for transparent and accurate reporting from those providers. So really, it comes back to good, clean data, safe, well-lit content, and transparency from those providers that you select.
Okay. Very clear. A question from the audience. What are the circumstances that would make a 60-second spot worthwhile?
Yeah, well, building name ID comes to mind, with a new candidate, perhaps in a bio spot, a beautiful, 60-second bio spot. And then you would likely want to augment that with 15s and 30s for frequency. Right. But certainly having a new candidate telling their story in a 60-second spot can be effective. Again, not relying entirely on that 60s, as we see, attention can drop off, and then really ensuring that you're getting the reach, you're getting the frequency of that message through 15s and 30s.
Gotcha. Sounds good. How often do you see the campaigns relying on your OEM glass level data versus their own first party voting data, or is it more collaborative?
Yeah, it might sound like an economics professor's answer, but yeah, it's more collaborative. We do see the use of both very, very regularly. One thing with regards to the ACR data that we as an OEM can provide is we have what we call off-the-shelf audiences, and we have whether you're trying to reach an Hispanic voter in a particular part of the country, a particular state or congressional district, perhaps, or a light linear or a moderate linear or a heavy linear TV viewer, that's again based on the viewing behaviors that we're able to capture off of the big glass. We can really help to target in ways that had not been available before, when there was more of a spray and pray media buying strategy.
Excellent. All right, Keith, listen, thank you so much. Why don't you stay on screen with me while I do our wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for coming and listening today. We had a terrific audience. So thrilled for LG Ad Solutions and Safe Edge and Ad Impact. Lots of really good information here. For our audience, a couple of things. If you were busy taking notes and missed some of what was being said, all the footage is going to be available on our site. And of course, that's synopsys.com on Monday. We will be sending out a executive summary tomorrow, Friday. And of course, lastly, please join us at other Synopsys events. We have Connected TV in March. We are about to close our Sports Media Awards. Keith, I haven't seen you enter the awards yet, but I know that you will be before midnight tomorrow. And then, of course, we have Big TV in New York in September at City Winery. So we hope you're having a wonderful first part of the year and are looking forward to seeing you more both virtually and live and in person as the year unfolds. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a really good Thursday.